Hello, everyone. Carrie here with Unicorn Company. And today I want to talk about a video that Discourse Minis put out recently. Um, Essentially, Discourse went over some of the stuff with BattleTech, and I feel like there's some things that need to be pointed out and maybe corrected that she had said. So, if you'd like to sit back with me, and we are going to take a look at this video and go from there. Hopefully, my really crappy internet does not betray me. And, you know, yeah. So anyway, let's take a look at what Discourse has to say. Oh, it'd help if I unmute the YouTube, wouldn't it?
Warhammer 40k. Just as in the 2010s War Machine grew to compete with Warhammer, now there is another huge contender threatening to topple Games Workshop's monopoly on the miniature wargaming hobby. A competitor that you might just fall in love with. But I won't. I will never play this game. And here's why. So I cover a lot of Games Workshop on the channel, but also a bunch of other miniature games too. And it's Other Games April. Thank you very much for that little invite, Maniac. So I'm seizing the opportunity to talk about a game other than Warhammer today. Unlike all my topics, I decided it by asking the fortune teller machine at my local abandoned amusement park what I should do. And it told me, sometimes you can be a loud, outgoing, and people person, but other times you can be quiet, shy, and reserved. Yeah, that pretty much nails me. That's kinda eerie. Zoltar just gets me. Unfortunately, though, that doesn't really help me out when it comes to a video topic, so I'm just gonna talk about BattleTech. That's right, it's BattleTech, the wargame franchise that slipped through more fingers than the One Ring. 4 maybe at most. Originally conceived of by FASA in 1984 as Battle Droids, they were forced to change the name to BattleTech or else George Lucas would come after them with a knife. On the
Now, I do want to say this is true. Apparently, they got a C&D from George Lucas over the game being called Battle Droids. But let's go on.
has since slipped through the wet fingers of WizKids Tops and was even ejaculated into the Xbox format by Microsoft's Game Studios before slapping wetly into the lap of Catalyst Game Labs.
All right, on this, so technically Tops still owns BattleTech. Catalyst licenses the game, great caretakers of the game, but they do not own it. The digital rights are owned by Microsoft. The game itself is owned by Tops. Catalyst licenses that game to, well, make the game. But let's keep going.
Who currently maintain the tabletop gaming license. And they've apparently done a great job with it, because my entire comment section seems to be circle jerking about the game every single moment that I look down there. Seriously, if I dare to mention any miniature game outside of Warhammer, I inevitably face a horde of, where's BattleTech? Why aren't you talking about BattleTech? Have you heard about our Lord and Savior BattleTech? BattleTech, BattleTech, BattleTech. Where did BattleTech come from? Why am I hearing about it all the time now? And why would I ever talk about it? What could this thing ever offer me? Which seems pretty dismissive, especially considering the fact that I'm quite sure the 2/3 of my Patreon membership all play BattleTech, and I run the risk of losing a lot of vital income as a result of this video. So to blindly placate them before I get into the why I don't play BattleTech, here's a rundown of everything BattleTech does have going for it. It's fresh. It's hip. It's a hard sci-fi adventure. Wow! Adventure. It has big, stompy robots. Stomp, robots. Factional politics. Quangos. Committee. Filibuster. Church and state. Parliamentary sovereignty. Expansive fiction. Sturgeon's Law.
Okay, on the fiction thing, I know she's doing like the bit, which is awesome. But yeah, BattleTech has one of the richest, as far as a game, has one of the richest bodies of fiction, one of the largest bodies of work as far as official fiction that's out there, that's based around a tabletop game. So yeah, there's novels going all the way back into the 1980s.
Affordable pricing. Video games.
Moderate review.
A whole new edition.
I think.
A massive, sexy new Kickstarter. And a healthy player base.
Actually playing the game.
Welcome to the world of BattleTech, where we have everything you could ever need. What more could you want? Well, a fun game for one. Okay, that's not true. BattleTech doesn't seem to be unfun, particularly. After all, you can't build a community around a game that isn't fun. You can't. It's impossible. No one has ever done it. Why are you looking at me like that for? Okay, but far be it from me to deny BattleTech's moment. It has a huge fan base and seems to have stood the test of time as both an IP and a miniature game. This thing lasted in 1984 and it's still around. It outlasted Thatcher. And every time Games Workshop screw the pooch, there always seems to be at least one massive exodus of players heading towards BattleTech. During the Games Workshop NDA leak and the content creator squeeze, remember that when everyone was talking about boycotting Games Workshop? Well, BattleTech became the game of the hour, and it was super hot and trendy to move from Warhammer to BattleTech. And the player base of the game just seems to keep growing. Hell, just the other day, Catalyst Game Labs launched a Kickstarter for a new BattleTech box set called Mercenaries, and it's relatively popular, having just raked in £4 million pounds sterling. Hang on, that's enormous. Wow. Yeah, I guess BattleTech has a lot of fans then. This video might be a little bit of a mistake. That's an insane amount of money. Damn. Other Games April was meant to be for smaller companies. I don't think that BattleTech really counts anymore. I'm still gonna do the video. I've already gotten this far. So yeah, obviously, BattleTech, it has a bright future ahead of it. But despite all the...
Okay, so about the Kickstarter, I'm going to be doing a whole video about it now that it's done, which is also going to double as the podcast episode. So audio only will be released on the podcast, but a video covering everything will be released here on YouTube. 7.5 million and some change. I say that like it's nothing. But also, as far as the giant burst of popularity, I think a lot of that had to do with the original Kickstarter, the Clan Invasion Kickstarter, which brought attention to a lot of people about the game and brought a lot of new miniatures in. Resculpted miniatures, which needed to happen. But that's a whole nother ball of wax, at least getting fully into that. But yeah, so 7.5 million, and a lot of that moving to BattleTech, I think, is either old players who are coming out of the woodwork with the new miniatures, or new people who saw the miniatures for the first time and were like, these are awesome, I want in. So let's keep going.
The obvious reasons why someone should play BattleTech, I do find myself instinctively reacting to the constant requests that I play the game with a no every single time. And that's not an indictment on BattleTech players. I'm sure that they're as fun to play with as any stranger at the local game store. It's everything around the game that makes me a bit nyeh. Firstly, mechs aren't my thing, and BattleTech is like the mech game. This is basically asking someone with critical diabetes to eat this giant egg. Quaff it down, diabetic person. Oh.
Okay, first of all, I just love the egg eating thing. Classic BattleTech, or what is just called BattleTech again, is a little bit in depth. It's a little bit granular. Alpha Strike, which she will mention, is not nearly as granular. Also, she's going to mention that this can be a tax write-off because she ate it in a video, which makes me really wonder, like, no, I don't need to eat a giant chocolate egg on video, but continuing.
We gotta eat the chocolate, even if you don't want I just wanted the chocolate, but it was really expensive, so to make it a part of my business expenses, I had to record myself eating it. Thanks. And sure, Catalyst call it an armored combat game and not a mech game. And sure, there's some non-mech miniatures like little tanks, but the game is really about mechs slapping each other about with giant sloppy laser guns as the primary focus. I play a lot of miniature war games, but almost universally, I stay away from mechs. For example, I collect for Conflict 47, the World War II giant mech robots game. It has a ton of mechs available to play, but I don't own a single one. I just have tanks, vampires, and werewolves. I just don't care about mechs. And I'm not sure why. It's probably due to a deep-seated trauma involved.
All right. So before she goes further, she did mention Conflict 47. I've tried covering it before before I switched over to this format. If you ever do want to try it, it's a great game. Weird War 2, and she's kind of right. You don't need the mechs; they're just kind of flashy and cool looking. Um, I have a jumping one in my army. It's Americans, simply because who couldn't resist a jumping mech beating up, the Germans? It's awesome. Anyway, continuing.
Future Cop LAPD, or perhaps it's because my uncle used to bully me in games of Tiberian Sun by spamming Titan Walkers during our online games. Who can say? I haven't examined it. I haven't really cared to. I don't need to see a therapist. Though I do have a soft spot for Space Marine Dreadnoughts, mostly because the act of sticking a paraplegic, half-dead child soldier inside a giant fucking killing machine is metal as f.
Yeah.
Okay, Discourse, if you're watching this, in Classic BattleTech, they're not as awesome. In Alpha Strike, they're God. They're terrifying. They're called Protomechs. Protomechs, essentially, the pilot is in the fetal position with a bunch of electronics, a direct neural interface to the little mech, which is like half the height of a normal mech, and they feel everything as though they are the mech. They are very close to the concept of a dreadnought. I mean, theoretically, you could just lop off somebody's arms and legs and stick them in there and give them like a feeding tube and stuff, and they would, yeah, it's literally, they are like dreadnought-esque, except they're far more maneuverable, and they work in packs of 5, which, yeah, imagine 5 dreadnoughts on the table at once that can like move 24 inches. That'd be a tame protomech.
It is, actually.
Metal.
But yeah, mechs, just not my thing. I tell you what is my thing though, mermaids.
All right, Discourse, I love you, but I'm not going to pitch your products on here. I will pitch my sponsor, though, Fortress Miniatures and Games. If you want some awesome BattleTech merch, as far as, say merch, like they're YouTubers. If you want some awesome BattleTech stuff, they do have some merch actually. They have some of the patches and stuff like that from the virtual world stuff. But otherwise, they have miniatures, terrain, third-party stuff like from Death Ray Designs, who also do a lot of their terrain. They have decals, they have metal miniatures, plastic miniatures, you name it. They have Clan Fox stuff. I have not even gone into that yet. I'm really tempted to, but yeah, so we're just gonna skip past the plug for your thing there, and we should be past it.
An independent creator. Everybody wins. God, they are absolute preferred vibe with miniatures. They're also monopose and feel pretty static. And honestly, they are minis that look like they have come directly from the 80s. And the
Okay, Discourse, I have a big issue with this. These models do not look like they're from the 80s. I don't think I have. Okay, go to Iron Wind Metals and look up. Oh God, you know what? No, I'll do it myself. I mean, I should be able to. So, Discourse, if you're watching, let me see if this works. BattleTech Aces. All right, so let's go into Iron Wind Metals real quick. Let me see if it's following me in OBS. It is. Okay. There we go. All right, let's look up the Orion. All right, you want to see the 80s discourse? This is the 80s. And eventually it'll load because my internet, I live in a place where internet is a luxury, I guess. It's not like the rest of the world. But yeah, there's a 80s miniature. Uh, there is an 80s miniature. Um, yeah, BattleTech minis are, I don't even know what's going on there. There we go. BattleTech minis look way better than they used to. Um, like you compare that, and I'm not even going to get into trying to find it. It's way different. The miniatures have gotten way better. They definitely don't look like they're from the 80s. So I think you need to yeah. I don't think you have a leg to stand on there. I'm sorry.
The standard of miniatures has moved on since then. This might be a little shallow, but I play miniature war games, not board games, and so the miniatures are so much more than mere tokens to me. They are core to the experience. This is an aesthetic, tactile hobby, and if I don't enjoy the miniatures for a game line, that's a crushing blow to its ability to seduce me. I want to be seduced by little men. I do appreciate that BattleTech minis are easy to paint though, especially for beginners, and the game does encourage the use of cardboard tokens, which is really cool.
Okay, something else here. As far as the game being a tabletop game, a miniature game, you have to look at them in the correct setting as far as terrain. If you're using the wrong scale of terrain with BattleTech miniatures, they do look like toys. But if you're using the wrong scale of terrain with 40K, they look like toys. It's the way it is. They have to have the miniatures have to be placed in the correct context in order to look right. Without that context, you don't know what you're looking at. Now, I do admit the new thug, is a little bit chibi-ish, but otherwise, yeah, no. So let's keep going.
Very consumer friendly and all round a nice thing to encourage. Nice job on that one, Catalyst. The game is also played at a scale that just isn't quite for me. I'm not yet at the age where I've regressed into playing 5 to 15mm wargaming yet. No mass Napoleonic regiments for me yet, I'm afraid. I prefer my games zoomed in at the 28 to 32mm size. And these are problems that emerge before we even start talking about the gameplay, which is, it must be said, something that does still look and play like a game from the 80s. I'm not saying that just because something is from the decade that fashion forgot that it's necessarily bad. I'm still a massive fan of Kajagoogoo's Too Shy. But miniature wargaming gameplay from that era is a little convoluted and detailed for me. Suffice to say that BattleTech has a lot going on with a ton of granular focus, and it's filled to the brim with more tables than the Great Hall of Rohan when they're having a birthday party. Seriously, look at these reference sheets. Not even Warhammer is.
Okay, I'm just going to mute her while she's talking about the reference sheets and the tables. Yes, BattleTech has tons of tables, but let's keep going.
location table is just yikes, you know? It's a level of detail in a war game that I'm not really personally looking for. I find detailing and tracking all these different modifiers as a bit laborious. We got numbers on top of numbers on top of charts on top of numbers and bars and dots and tables and referencing. Oh! There's a lot of working out modifiers and range, and the gameplay pacing suffers as a result. It can be slow and awkward while playing. You have to calculate if you're hit, then you have to find out where, then how many hits, then divide damage into different groups, roll for multiple locations, and see if internal damage is done. Consult critical hit tables, and then mechs can fall over and heat up and blow up, and I just want to shoot a guy. I like my game a tad more abstract and a tad less Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. It commits the gravest sin of all, having a lot of math. And look, I love detailed games.
Okay, it's actually not a lot of math. I know you think it's a lot of math, but it's not. You start with your gunnery. So if you're shooting somebody, it's your gunnery skill plus the range plus their movement plus any modifiers. That's it. It's 4 things. So yeah, your movement and their movement. So if you're a skill 3, you walk, that's +1. They're at medium range for your weapon, that's +2. And they have a 2 movement modifier, that's +2. And then there's some woods, that's +1. That's it. You don't, there's not a bunch of stuff there. But go on. And yes, it is a system from the 80s. I give you that. And a lot of it's because of the fact that they have there is so much in the system that if you were to change it drastically, change it drastically and invalidate 94, 04, 14, 40 years of rule books and mechs and units, and it would be tremendously bad. Now, mind you, you're going to mention Alpha Strike. Adding Alpha Strike as an alternative, a full-on tabletop alternative, is a good thing, but we'll talk about that once you mention it.
And tables. I play GURPS, but with war games, speed is the thing for me. I just don't have the time for tracking all of these little dots. I am a variety gamer. I play a ton of different games. No game is going to be my forever game. And I just don't have the brain space to remember like any of the system and commit it to memory. I play a different game every single week. Having to relearn combat every single time is just a bit much for me. Though, to their credit, Catalyst Game Labs are aware of this struggle because in their beginner box they included a more streamlined and faster, more beginner-friendly game mode called Alpha Strike. And all of this for what? It's a game of armored combat, but I'm an infantry girl.
Good for you. Mobile infantry made me the man I am today.
I'm all about my miniatures.
All right, Discourse, and anybody listening. First of all, Alpha Strike is not just something in the box for it's easy for beginners. It's actually a full-on game system that uses the BattleTech universe, the models, everything else. Now, you may notice that my rulebook's bent. That's because my mail person actually bent the rulebook to put it in my post office or in my mailbox. Because apparently they are like wickedly strong, and I know I never want to get in a fight with them. But yeah, Alpha Strike, it even has its own core box set. So you can get an Alpha Strike core box set, and it's a pretty in-depth game for being what a lot of people will call a watered-down version of BattleTech. It's actually really good. Most games, if you're playing a 400-point game, it's going to be done in under 2 hours. 2 hours or under with 2 players who know the system well enough. But yeah, and that's roughly 12 to 16 units per side usually if you're playing at a veteran level, which just makes the game go faster. But yeah. Also, as far as infantry, let's hop back over to Ironwind. Because why not? So you have infantry, we have infantry. It's here. somewhere. There they are. Here's the little monsters. Yeah, so we have plastic versions of these, we have metal ones, um, and we have a bunch of other different like battle armor. Basically, these things are roughly equivalent to like a Terminator as far as what they're capable of. Um, but yeah, you have a bunch of different, and you also have standard infantry. You have infantry with artillery. Um, you have commandos. You have Brant. I think it's Branth. Is it Branth riding? Yes. So something you're not going to run into in. Uh, there they are. These boogers right here. Aerial beast infantry. In flight and on ground. These, yeah. Show me a guardsman riding a dragon. That's awesome. But you were saying about infantry.
Game being tight and flesh-based. I love infantry combat, I love horde armies, and I can get very unexcited by the vroom vroom car combat. So considering the BattleTech doesn't even seem to have infantry miniatures as far as I can tell, it could hardly hope to ensnare me in its web. But of course, we haven't even begun to talk about the true nightmare. Hex grids. Yes, BattleTech uses hex grids. I don't like hex grids. I'm not a fan of grid combat at all. When I play a war game, I yearn to be free, to roam, to frolic free range style. I want to be a Prussian general. You cannot consign my...
Okay, while Discourse is ranting about hex grids, I do want to say that, let me make sure if she changes topics, we'll maybe have closed captions. There we go. So yeah, like it's a holdover from the 80s, but if you're playing Alpha Strike, and you can play Hexless BattleTech, but Alpha Strike's way easier. If you're playing Alpha Strike, there are no hex grids to worry about. So let's see what. Oh yeah, we're still talking about moving models and stuff. This is all Alpha Strike does all this for BattleTech. If you want to play BattleTech as a pure miniatures game, Alpha Strike does it for you with larger forces than you're going to get in the normal game of BattleTech and in a more reasonable time. Also, okay, hold up there, Discourse. I want to go back here real quick. So let's hit play again because there's an image that came up and I'm going to unmute. Just listen to what's said.
I see it every time, Glenn. I'm just too polite to say anything.
Well, not
Plus,
about Glenn.
a big part of the appeal of mini war games to me are handcrafted terrain and immersive tables. Being enraptured.
Okay, handcrafted terrain and tables, immersive tables. You can get this with Alpha Strike. I mean, you can get it with BattleTech too if you're playing Hexless, but you can get this with Alpha Strike. This is not a problem. One of the things I like to joke about is that when I go to a game store and play Alpha Strike, we have the only table with a skyline. That's right. Because a lot of it is city combat. We have the only table that has a skyline. And yeah, you can get they've released the new box set. You get some cardboard stuff. You can 3D print stuff. You can buy stuff that's 3D printed. You can buy stuff from companies like Death Ray Designs, Fortress Miniatures and Games, just off the top of my head. There's stuff out there. There's terrain out there for BattleTech, and you can have a beautifully done big table for BattleTech, for Alpha Strike at least, just as easily as you can for 40K or War Machine. Well, War Machine's weird, but yeah. So it's a moot point.
By the spectacle of gaming. Grids are the antithesis of that. And okay, I get it. As someone outside of the game ecosystem, it seems like you don't need to play with hex grids for BattleTech, that there's just a certain style of play, that you can use measuring tape instead, but that seems to be an ecumenical matter within the community, with grid combat still being the main style of play. And that's just not something that I'm interested in. But Catalyst Game Labs does get a huge element of wargaming right though. For everyone out there who's wondering, how do I make a commercially viable, no, a thriving and successful war game? What do I do to get it right? Well, BattleTech has the answer, and that is have a good series of video games, and maybe some fiction books too, that also helps. Seriously, the most important part of any commercial war game is the bit that ain't a war game. Move over Warhammer Plus, BattleTech had a cartoon in the 90s.
Yes, there was a cartoon. Oh God. Discourse, if you're watching, Renegade HPG. Go to Renegade HPG. I may not agree with them all the time, which is becoming a less and less common thing to agree with them. But I can tell you they have the entire cartoon series, and it is very much the style and everything you would expect from a 90s Saban cartoon series.
That's how you take an incredibly niche concept like miniature mechs fighting each other and spearhead it into a massive £4 million Kickstarter.
7.5 million US dollars at this point, which is a lot more than 4 million. I think it had 10 days to go on it. So
that is a lot of money, isn't it? It also has a ton of lore, which I think is incredibly attractive to a lot of hobbyists who want a deep dive rabbit hole to fall into. It does have a ton of books written about it after all. I can't speak to their quality, but people read Black Library stuff, so
depending on the era and the author, it wavers. There's some better stuff, some worse stuff. We did have Mike Stackpole writing for us for the longest time, and I think he's making a comeback. Don't quote me on that though. But yeah. And then Brian Young, one of the newer writers, amazing writer. Absolutely love his work.
So how much worse could these be? I don't want anybody to get me wrong about this video. I'm really glad that BattleTech exists, though perhaps it's for some pretty selfish reasons. BattleTech is another entrance point into wargaming, one that is able to abduct new people from video games and introduce them to analog games, like an evil fae stealing babies for their own alien purposes. And frankly, the BattleTech ecosystem seems way less predatory and closed off than the Games Workshop one. It has a lower cost to entry, and it encourages players to stick around in the wargame hobby by not burning them out on constant FOMO releases and a treadmill of new rules. BattleTech cultivates hobbyists and lets them grow like fields of fleshy wheat. In other words, BattleTech seems to be the Eldar to Games Workshop's Dark Eldar. But I do still collect Dark Eldar, and I suspect that a reason for this healthier climate within the community is the fact that multiple companies own various rights to the BattleTech IP, which has led overall to a healthier game. I'm pretty
Okay, I wanted to wait until she got to this. I mentioned earlier Microsoft, who licenses it out to Harebrained Schemes. So like the MechWarrior 5, the basically all the current games that it's licensed out by Microsoft, who owns the digital rights to BattleTech, or well, the video game rights. It's really weird. Topps owns all the other rights essentially. It's actually caused some consternation between the two. Like one will do a thing. Mainly, most people look at the game side of it as where you go for your canon information. Somebody will make a game. They will do a thing in the game. It's not canon, but it's really popular, and people start asking for it in canon. We are seeing some crossover with the MechWarrior 5 and MechWarrior Online mechs into the game, which I have mixed feelings on. But, we did get our MechWarrior 4 Templars and Black Knights and an attempt at the MechWarrior 4 Vulture. So,
firmly looking in the window from the snowy embankment outside, I'm not a part of the community. But seeing the prices and the culture, it all feels a lot healthier than Warhammer. And yeah, sorry, my problem with BattleTech centers on the game themes and miniatures. But I absolutely understand the appeal. It's just not for me. And so that is why I've linked you to this video. Commenter on one of my videos about other games than Warhammer. This is why I don't play BattleTech. And why BattleTech just ain't my game. But maybe it's yours. And maybe this is the first time that you've heard of it. And now you're going to check it out thanks to this video. In which case, aha, BattleTech fans! You can't send me hate mail now because this video is in actuality helping out your game. So there. I've cleverly promoted a game under the guise of being quite critical. There we are. The power of negativity used for good. How about that? It's almost like critique and energy has a place in the ecosystem of discussion. And if you want to help support this channel,
All right, so yeah, Discourse is right there. You know, critique and basically being able to talk about things in the gaming community and about games themselves, the good things and the bad things. That is important. That is very important for the community, but also for the games themselves. For that. To have that relationship to where people can see things, just like I mentioned with some of the video game stuff where it got moved into the tabletop. Certain mechs like the Argus, the Thanatos, the Madcap Mark II, the oh, we did not get the Mech Warrior 4. Well, no, we didn't get the Mech Warrior 4 Templar, but the Mech Warrior 4 Black Knight, the Hellhound 2, or the Hellcat, which is the name I prefer for it. Yeah, these are all things that happen because of fans being like, hey, we really like this. And Catalyst listening to them and talking to the people who do the digital side and being like, hey, look, can we do this? Games companies that don't listen to their players, companies that ignore you, yeah, and when people can't have a discourse or a discussion about what's going on with the game, that's a problem. So yeah, I mean that's everything that Discourse got right and wrong about BattleTech. If you are listening and you want to ever play a game, not the hex type, but the actual sit down at a table and play it, I would be more than willing, if you are ever in the US, to sit down with you and teach you how to play BattleTech Alpha Strike. I think it'll change your mind. All that being said, if you haven't seen Discourse, go over and check out her channel. It's Discourse Minis, and I do want to thank my patrons. And also, if you are interested in supporting the podcast, I recommend that you go to patreon.com/unicorncompany. And we have a few different tiers. Also, it really helps out if you like and subscribe, and ring the little notification bell so you'll see when new videos come out. So that is everything for tonight. This is Carrie, signing off.